Hello. So, my name's Amiel. This is the second episode of the EJB talk show. Today I have a hat on. And I'm here. My second guest is pianist, percussionist, and foremost composer, the amazing Samuel Kerr. How are you doing today, Sam?
I'm doing good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm hyped. I'm happy to do this one. You were supposed to do this yesterday. You could have done this yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah, but Jacob took the offer.
I was super excited though. This is fun. Yeah.
And you were, I forgot again. You did a lesson, right?
Yeah, I went to Guelph to get a lesson, which is kind of unusual, but it was good. Just played some timpani. Yeah.
Good stuff, man.
Pretty chill.
All right. So talk about like yourself. How would you describe yourself currently, like musically, in your current state of your career? You'd say. So how would you describe yourself right now?
Well, I mean, I guess like you say, I'm more of a composer because that's what I want to do professionally. I think. I mean, I just finished an undergrad in performance, so it's not like it's like a firm label or anything because I still love performing and all that kind of thing. But yeah, I guess I'm just sort of heading into the beginning of my career in a meaningful way. I don't want to be stuck like in a, I don't want to say like label, but like I don't want to just be a performer or a composer or whatever, like just have to live in one of those things. Because I think one of the most interesting things about being here, but also like doing what we do is like the mix of things that we get to do.
Right.
You know, like not even just composition and performance, but also like interdisciplinary things that happen. So yeah, I guess I'm still sort of, you know, I'm 22, like I'm a baby in artist years. I'm like a little child. So
Right.
yeah, I don't want to like commit myself to one thing yet, but I think composition is kind of what I want to do.
Right. So you've been composing for a while now. Like you did your whole undergrad minoring in composition, right? Mm-hmm. What was it like to, per se, turning composition into like your homework, your job? Because I remember, I bet that when you were in high school, when it wasn't that serious, it was your fun thing to do, right? You're letting out your creative energy, but you came here and it became like homework. You have staff's duet, right? So how did that kind of shift affect you personally?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because I think composition is, at least for me, and I think for a lot of people, something spontaneous and like comes from within, like not to be, you know, metaphysical, cheesy, whatever, but I think that it is sort of it's an outward projection of what you've internalized over your life. Right. And so turning something that's like a personal exercise into like schoolwork, like you say, is sort of, it can be problematic, you know, like you have to like check boxes and fulfill criteria of like these specific assignments, but you also can't like lose the spark of what got you interested in music in the first place. And I think the risk for an academic environment, and I'm not saying this school is like this, but the risk is always like, you know, having it be like an academic thing always.
Yeah, it's the way it is. It's not like throwing shade at like
no, of course,
any specific institution.
No, it's no slight on like academia. It's just like I think that's a concern, you know. So yeah. But I've been fortunate enough to have teachers who are very interested in having creativity at every turn with percussion and composition, so that's been good. Yeah. Right.
And how do you think the difference is, since you know you major performance and you kind of experienced both worlds, a very healthy amount of both worlds? How would you say that like turning like your performance into like homework, saying like, oh, I have this recital and then you have this composition due, how different are those two things, would you say? Or do you think they're kind of similar?
Well, it's, you know, it's, again, I think kind of performance in an academic institution is sort of like a square peg in a round hole to an extent. I mean, like you can objectively evaluate like technique and all these things, but like, I mean, one of the cool things about our studio is that like all of the recitals are super different. Right. You know, like I really loved going last year, and there was like 10 of them, I guess, and like nobody played the same piece of music, I think, and everyone was just sort of like all over the map with what they wanted to do. So I think it's hard to like grade that and be like, this is good percussion, this is bad percussion, because like, you know, like even our teachers, like we have two orchestral giants who are amazing, and we have two more contemporary people, and it's this different kind of thing.
All right.
Yeah, I guess it's different in that like I think composition is obviously more like creative, like it's more like you have to pull something from nothing, I guess, whereas performance is perfecting something that already exists and maybe adding your own flair, which is important, but it's less of a like I'm dragging this thing from nowhere, if that makes sense.
Right.
But they're mutually helpful. You know, like I mean, I wish I was more of a perfectionist, and I think the reason that I'm less of a perfectionist is because of the composition thing.
Right.
But, you know, and that doesn't necessarily help for like orchestral performance, but like for playing a lot of the percussion stuff that we do, it's fine. So
Right.
yeah.
So I want to talk about, like, I'm going to ask this, like, every time now. What would your earliest musical memory be? Nothing, like, about touching an instrument, unless it is, but, like, first time that you can recall music, like hearing music and stuff like that.
That's a good question.
Or even being impacted by music. That might be a little easier.
Well, I started pretty early. Like, I started piano when I was 5, I think.
And did you want to?
No.
Are you like most? Yeah.
Yeah, I was forced, and I almost quit a few times.
Right.
And it was my mom who was like, no. But to her credit, I mean, that's why I'm here, and that's why, you know. But I come from a bit of a musical family, but I think...
Mostly your mom.
Yeah, my mom went here actually like 30 years ago, which is cool. But I think it was probably my grandma playing piano.
Okay.
And she's now deceased, but she used to play like Chopin and like Beethoven and that kind of thing.
Was she a professional musician also?
She was just she was someone who loved music.
I see.
And she took lessons for a long time, and then she had this old like sort of out of tune upright, but she would play. Like I remember like Tristesse and a few of the nocturnes, and it was just like. It's really nice. I'm not sure that's what like got me like galvanized, like I want to go to music school because of that, but I just remember just like really liking how it sounded, and
right.
That must have been when I was like 4 or 5 or 6, I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when was the first time you touched like an instrument? Like your experience in being a performing pianist at a very young age like that?
Well, I think I started when I was 5-ish, and
right.
I had a very like dodgy start, I think. Like I wasn't receiving like great instruction.
Right.
And it was just sort of like it was like this informal thing. It was like you don't have to practice, you just do it, and
it's your hobby.
Yeah, and I was learning rhythms like apple pie, pie yum, you know, like gooseberry. And then when I got to like junior high band in grade 7 with my teacher, he was like, what is this rhythm? And I was like, huckleberry. And he was like, what are you talking about? Like, bro, what does this mean? So I started sort of informally, and then when my parents were like, okay, well, this might be something he wants to do, they put me in sort of like more like jazz piano lessons.
Okay.
And that's like my main upbringing theory knowledge is more jazz,
okay.
Which I think enabled the creativity and the composition down the road, because it was less like no shade on RCM, but like that theory is very like 5-1, 5-1, 5-1, tonic dominant, but whereas like the jazz harmony I learned was very much like just chill and like play music, and this is why this sounds like that. Here's a mode, here's a whatever, and I really liked that.
Right.
That was great.
And so junior high, that was when you started playing percussion, I assume?
Yes, starting grade 7.
So
yeah.
what was that like?
Well, I had to fight for the spot because like there were like quotas for instruments, and when we started,
right,
and I think there was like 30 of us, and so he was allowing for like 2 percussionists.
30 wanted to go for percussion.
Well, sorry, no, like 30 in the class.
Oh, okay.
And then like 2 of us, or there was 2 spots for percussion, and I think like at the beginning like 5 people wanted it, and I like just stood there and waited until they all left, and then I got a spot because there's some stupid reason. It was like I was getting braces soon, so I didn't want to have to blow through an instrument or something.
And change your embouchure and all of that.
Yeah, so I was like, screw this, I'm just going to hit stuff. And then that was what, like grade 7s? That was 11 or 12 years ago now. And it's stuck, I guess. Like, and the other thing is, like, I didn't think I was going to, like, I think for a while I knew I was going to go to music school, like in high school. Like, I thought that was going to happen, but I didn't know I wanted to do performance. But it was my band teacher who was like, before you do anything else, if it's conducting or composition or anything, like you have to be a good performer.
Right.
Like that should be your fundamental basis, is being a good performer. And so I wasn't going to apply for performance, and then I sort of applied even like to U of T on a whim, and then it worked out, and I was like, okay,
right,
that's cool.
So this might hop out of this little chronologic thing I'm asking you, but when was the first time you'd say like you've composed something, or like
I know exactly.
Yeah.
It's, well, I mean, like, for a long time, I, like, called myself a composer because my piano teacher did, like, he told me to call myself a composer. But I hadn't really written much. Like, I wrote, like, a crappy, like, jazz tune that was mostly, like, references, and it was...
And this is before high school?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was, like, grade 9 or something. And then I didn't write a lot in grade 10. And then randomly, just this one trip, we were skiing in British Columbia, and I brought my laptop, and we were in Revelstoke, which is, like, in the middle in the mountains. And as the sun was going down, I just, like, opened Sibelius and started writing, like, a band piece. I don't know why. Like, I think I wanted to try, and I just sort of, you know... And then that night, I wrote, like, my first piece. Like, it just happened. Like, it came out spontaneously. And that was, like, surprising, because until then, I was like, oh, I'm a composer, but I hadn't written anything. And then suddenly, like, this thing sort of came to life, and I was like, oh, this is cool.
Right.
And that's when I knew that it was something I could do, I think.
I see.
And that was when I was 16, I think. So that's, like, not super long ago.
Right.
That's, like, in memory.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
So, in terms of composition, since, like, maybe during your time at UFT or after, since you're technically after your undergrad, when did you really find your personal, like, niche and style in composition?
I don't think I've found it yet.
Really?
Well, so I think it's more of a, like I say, I'm 22, and I think I mentioned this to Ayun, and I was sort of like, oh yeah, I don't have a style yet, and she was like, that's good, like, don't, like,
right.
Because, like, I mean, I don't have, like, I know what kind of music I write. Like, I write tonal, post-tonal, harmonic, melodic things, generally, but I don't have, like, there's the Kerr chord, you know, which is, like, that sounds so pretentious to say, like, but it, like, I have ideas that I like using, like, the mountains, for example, have found their way into my work a bunch of times. Like, that's sort of like a source of inspiration, but I don't think I have, like a style of harmony or style of writing that I use.
Right.
And that might develop over time, but I'm sort of letting it come organically, I think.
Right.
And I've been really, like, happy with how it has sort of meandered, like, the water coming down the slope and going various ways and branching out into, like, and that's kind of what my experience has been, which is really cool. That's Andy Bush. Very nice.
Hey, Andy.
Hi.
Hey.
Yeah, I think I don't want to commit to anything right now.
Right.
And that's also, like, I don't want to be just a percussion composer.
No.
And by virtue of me being here and having a bunch of amazing colleagues, I've written a lot of percussion music. But I don't want to just be, like, pigeonholed into that, you know, like, because, like, once you become a choral composer, you're a choral composer. Like, that, you just, like, people just think of you as that.
Right.
Which is not always what you want, especially at a young age, if you want to experiment in different other ways. So, yeah, I guess I'm still finding my way. And that's okay. Like, I'm totally happy with that.
And do you feel like currently the state of a career in, like, contemporary, like, classical composition is a very fruitful one right now? Not that could be, like, interpreted as be really, like, weird, but, like, more in the sense of what is your opinion on the state of current classical contemporary music compositions right now?
That's I mean, I don't, like, basically my knowledge of, like, the job market in the field is only what people tell me, because I'm basically still in school.
Right.
But leaving that aside, I mean, there's always been this interesting, I mean, I guess since the Second World War, without getting all philosophical, there's always been this interesting, like, what is the purpose of music? Like, is it performers' music? Is it for the audience? You know, if you're writing contemporary music, is it academic, or is it narrative, or is it whatever? And there's, like, these competing worldviews, and I'm more of a composer who thinks, like, I'd like to write for an audience. That doesn't mean you have to sort of, like, water down your arts, the lowest common, you know, like, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, it's, but, like, I think the balance that I want to strike is, like, you can write a piece of music, and musicians on stage will be like, wow, this is a well-crafted, interesting piece of music. And then any person with any level of training can wander into the hall from the street and be like, that's an interesting thing, I wonder what that is.
Right.
Because, like, if you go far one way, it's, like, super academic, and it's all process-oriented, and there's no, I'm not saying there's no emotion, but there's no, like, narrative, whatever. And I feel like that's alienating to a lot of audiences who don't understand.
Right.
And then the other way is just like commercial music where you're just writing for what you think will fill the house, and I don't know if I like that either. So, but I think you can have both. Like I think there's a happy medium to be struck. That's just my opinion. I mean,
Right.
that's, like it really depends on the person, and academia is different, and once you're in the real world, it's different. And, you know.
Do you have any commissions coming up that you want to bring up that you're excited about at all?
So I'm finishing a piece for Beavis Ng. It's a marimba solo. That's going to premiere in the spring on his recital, which I'm super excited about, just because, I mean, it's a piece that, I won't spoil it, but it's a piece that has a lot of meaning to both of us. And also, he's a fantastic performer. I'm sure he'll be on one of these talks later. But he's incredible, and that's exciting. And I wrote a piece for the TSYO with Jurian, which is theoretically happening in the spring or maybe the fall, which is really exciting. And even just today, I had a meeting with a cellist about cello and piano piece for like 2024.
Right.
So, yeah, there's a few things cooking. Yeah.
Back to the Beavis one. Would you say that you, like, in a sense, maybe you collaborated with him just like in making that composition happen, or like what do you mean, how, and without going into it, of course, like having meaning to both of you guys?
Well, so he approached me to ask for the piece.
Okay.
And then we sat down and talked about, like, this is sort of how the beginning of every process starts. Like I wrote a piece for Jacob a few years ago, and this is how we did it too. We sat down and talked, and we're like, you know, what is the concert like? What is the theme? What do you want from the piece? Like, is there any extended techniques you want? Like that kind of sort of nitty gritty stuff. And sort of going from there, like, I think the composer always has artistic control, but like that has never been an issue because like I want to write something that fits in with the program that he's writing, and we sort of have like a shared emotional experience, and it's gonna touch on that basically.
Right.
And so it's perfect because like I never feel inhibited. I just feel inspired by these conversations, because like when you're writing and someone just says like write a piece, ironically that's sort of harder than someone saying like write a marimba trio in C minor that's 6 minutes long. Like if you give yourself some restrictions, it's way easier to be creative than if you just have like a completely blank canvas and then have to do something. You know, like you need a little bit of like a start, and that's basically what that conversation is.
It's very sick.
Yeah,
I'm very excited for that. I did not know. That's
cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, and of course, again, Beavis is insane, so it's gonna be really awesome.
So I'm gonna start wrapping this up. But do you have any advice for any young undergrad or whatever, or even any composer out there, and in a sense, composer performers out there, that you just wanna say? Any advice, general advice?
I think I would say something that's maybe less like immediately practical, but I would say just enjoy the time that you have, not in an ominous way, like not just like, oh my god, yeah. But like pre-COVID, I think I took for granted the opportunities that I had, just with like being in this school and also being in Toronto and being with the studio and being with the composition department, and like just being surrounded all the time by amazing people, like the most interesting people in the country from around the world. And like I think you kind of learn just as much from your peers as you do from your teachers in that way. And like I think you really need to just like when you're feeling overwhelmed, or if there's like a bunch of deadlines or like all these things are happening, I think taking a step back and just realizing how lucky you are to just be with the people that you are with is really nice. Not to, it sounds very cheesy, but
but it's
don't forget, and that's also like, that the connections that you make, not from a business point of view, but from an interpersonal point of view, from like these are my friends, we're in rehearsal together, I'm writing for this person, like these are connections that will last for a long time. Like these are, you look back and like, our teachers were in school together, and that's when like some of my teachers are writing for other teachers and all this stuff, and that's where these things happen. And you're setting like, this is the first step in this lifelong journey of like collaboration and interesting music making. So just take a look around every once in a while, I guess. And because like I've had a really good time here, And I'm probably not going to be in Toronto next year. I mean, fingers crossed. Not to, but just like I really, these last 2 years, I've been really thinking a lot about like how blessed I am, and just enjoying that. Not that, you have bad days, you have good days, whatever, but like it's a really cool thing that we get to do interesting musical things with interesting musical people. Right. And just always being, happy about that is, yeah.
Nice. So finally, I want to ask you, what do you have, what are your personal goals for yourself for this year, for 2023?
Well, I mean, the most glaring thing is I'd like to get into grad school.
Nice.
Which is happening right now. That process is happening right now. Right. But personal goals, I guess. That's a good question. I'm sort of staring like a life transition in the face with going to grad school, or like going to a different country, or something is going to happen next year because I'm leaving my undergrad and going somewhere else. And I just want to, keep up performance and keep up the things that have brought me joy the last few years, and make sure that, like, despite the change that is going to happen, like, keeping meaning and musical interest in life.
Right.
Because if I mostly mean that with, like, if I'm going into composition full time, that means I'm not going to be playing as much, which is kind of like, that's a big change from the last 5 to 10 years. So just making sure that I have some of that in my life, I guess, is my goal going forward.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
All right. You've been an amazing guest, man. Really appreciate you doing this. I hope you guys enjoyed Sam Kerr here. His website will be linked down below, and his Instagram. You should definitely check his stuff out. And yeah, thank you so much for watching.